Jackson Arnold is an Auburn Tiger, but is he a top 5 returning quarterback in the SEC next year? What's up, War Report family? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday. It's the off season, Chris, and it's the new year. So this is our first Auburn Express of the new year. Before we get into it, man, how was your holidays?
Yeah, Mike, Happy New Year to you and yours, and obviously the Auburn Express family. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And it went great, man. I've obviously spent a lot of time with family, turned a year older as a Christmas baby, so that was a lot of fun. And, man, just watched a lot of football, all the bowl games. 'Tis the season. Went down to Tampa to watch the rival of the Auburn Tigers fall to Michigan. I'm sure everybody watching shed a tear seeing that game. I had a great time, man. Yeah, excited for 2025. Obviously, talking football, it never sleeps. It's never really the off season, but diving into basketball, baseball, everything in between, man. It's been a lot of fun. So excited to chat with you once again, man. It's good to be back in the saddle officially.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, look, if you're stressed out this holiday season over the college football playoffs, our friends at the Rogue Shop have you covered. Visit rogueshop.com and use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Our guy Richard, longtime sponsor of the War Report, Chris, serving up relief this holiday season. So if you bet the farm on Oregon, you're sad because Ohio State took belt to ass as I expected. The Rogue Shop has you covered. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life. Even if it's the Oregon Ducks, the Rogue Shop has you covered. Again, rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Look, the SEC is going to be interesting next year. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is still playing football right now, but Jackson Arnold has ditched Oklahoma. He's an Auburn Tiger. I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about this yet. Is he a top 5 returning starting quarterback in the SEC next year? Now, look, before we started recording, we talked about who's coming back. I think we both agree Quinn Ewers is probably gone. Like he's not going to be at Texas next year. I expect him to go pro. So if we take him out of the equation, we know Carson Beck has disqualified himself. He said, I'm out. Georgia took a thrashing versus Notre Dame. Let's start at the top. Who's the best returning quarterback in the SEC next year, given the fact that Ewers is probably gone and Beck is definitely gone?
Yeah, and based off what I've seen, Mike, to this point, it comes down to me to two guys. I think you look at South Carolina's Lenora Sellers and you look at LSU's Garrett Nussmeier. And, although he was marred by inconsistency, as many quarterbacks and teams were in the 2024 season, seeing him in the bowl game, I think, again, reminded us of what he's capable of. I got to go with Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. I just think that I think you could argue he's got maybe the highest ceiling in the conference. And I give him the nod over Sellers because I still just think the experience factor, how much experience Nussmeier has. He's an older player. There's some things with Lenora Sellers I want to see in regards to his progression as a passer. And, I think we saw some things in the bowl game when South Carolina did not have Rocket Sanders that I think we realized how much of a load Sanders carried for the Gamecocks. So I'm going to go Garrett Nussmeier right now. But I think to your point, Mike, and the reason I'm so excited to chat, this is going to be a fascinating conversation all offseason long because I don't think there's just like that clear cut. This dude is just head and shoulders above the rest, number one. It's going to be very week to week again, where I think, 1 week you might look at and Garrett Nussmeier, just like in 2024, right? We're having conversations. Hey, that guy, he's Heisman Trophy caliber. He could win the Heisman. A couple weeks go by and you're like, man, maybe LSU should bench Garrett Nussmeier. Like it was that up and down. But right now, and there's some really good candidates, but right now I'm going Garrett Nussmeier as my best returning starter.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is a good pick. For me, I think if we're going by who dropped the biggest bag to keep their returning starter, it's going to have to be Lenora Sellers. Reportedly, Chris, $5 million in the NIL bucket to keep Lenora Sellers in the fold. That number has been all over the place. It started at 2. Certain schools were reported to have made overtures to Lenora Sellers, as was being reported by multiple outlets. We stayed away from it. But if you're to believe that Lenora Sellers got a $5 million bag to stay at South Carolina, I think he's the best returning starter. Was there a hotter team over the last 6 games of the SEC schedule than South Carolina?
There wasn't. And again, Lenora Sellers was a large part of that. I mean, again, like I mentioned, you saw with no Rocket Sanders in the bowl game, 3 red zone trips for South Carolina, and they got just 3 points from it. So Sellers, I mean, like many other players, he needs help. But certainly you look down the stretch, and I mean, some of the plays, Mike, that he made, and that's one thing I will say he's got on Garrett Nussmeier. You know, he does things, Sellers does things that you can't teach. You just can't coach. The way he's able to escape the pocket and evade pressures, and he's such a load to bring down, right? He can get guys off him and make a play, extend plays, what have you, use his legs. So there wasn't a hotter team down the stretch. It's one of the reasons, Mike, we were talking about South Carolina is potentially, you know, do they deserve to be in the college football playoff? So, you know, no doubt I list Lenora Sellers as at worst a top 3 returning starting quarterback. But again, just I think experience weighs a big part in it. And that's why I give Nussmeier the nod at number 1.
Yeah, I like Nuss. He's a gunslinger. And if you look at the way that he started that bowl game, good God, I thought he was going to throw for 600 yards in that game, the way he started the game. Obviously, they cooled off a little bit, but the game was never in doubt for LSU. So you saw what that ceiling looks like with Nussmeier, you know, at quarterback. And I think that the SEC is wide open next year. Are we potentially witnessing a changing of the guard with Georgia? What happened in their bowl game? Carson Beck started the season as a fringe Heisman candidate. Obviously, injuries sat him out. Now, is Gunnar Stockton the clear heir apparent there in Georgia? There's going to be an opening, I think, for whoever has the most consistent quarterback play for them to step in and take over the league next year. God like what Texas has in Arch Manning stepping in for Quinn Ewers if he goes pro, which again we're expecting. But Jalen Milroe has announced his intentions to enter the NFL draft. And Nico at Tennessee, does he return? Is he draft eligible?
He's not. So he was a redshirt freshman this year. He will 100% be back for the Vols. But I wanted to say to your point, Mike, I think what makes 2025 so fascinating right now, which I say right now because these rosters can still change a ton, although I think most are settled on their quarterback situation. Yeah, I mean, I think, Mike, a lot of the top contenders, how it shakes out at the top is, how do young quarterbacks perform? I mean, Arch Manning, I think we feel probably the best about just because, again, we've seen flashes and the kid's I've heard he's got phenomenal football IQ, which would make sense. He's a Manning. He's got all the intangible. He's got all the tools, the arm. He can move as well, mobile quarterback. So I think we feel confident in Arch Manning. But, I mean, what does Ty Simpson do for Alabama? What does Gunnar Stockton do for Georgia? Right? There's some young quarterbacks, new quarterbacks, fresh faces that are going to have to step up. And, I mean, listen, you know as well as I do, Mike. I mean, look at Alabama this year. When Jalen Milroe played well, Bama won. And when he played poorly, they lost. I mean, it's you don't want to oversimplify all the complexities of college football, but one thing reigns true. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. And if you don't have a quarterback that can go out there on a week-in, week-out basis and at least play well and be solid, then you're going to struggle. So, I mean, if Gunnar Stockton doesn't work out, if Ty Simpson doesn't work out, it could be a rough year at the top for some of those top contenders.
I agree with you completely, Chris. And I mean, when you look at how it boils down, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. That's a quote. Put it on a T-shirt. We have preached this is a quarterback's game now. And without dynamic quarterback play, it is really, really difficult to win at these levels of college football. So, what are they going to be able to do? I think it's going to be an important conversation moving here. The teams that are doing quarterback development the best are going to have the best shot. If you don't have that, you have to have an all-world defense like 2021 Georgia to get through that. But to repeat, Stetson Bennett had to take the next step. He couldn't be the guy in 2022 that he was in 2021 if they were going to go back-to-back. And he made New York for the Heisman ceremony. So I agree. It is the exception and not the rule to win without dynamic quarterback play. But Does Auburn have that in Jackson Arnold? That's the question that we're going to answer right after a quick word from our friends at Los Amigos. Visit Los Amigos restaurant at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. If you're in the Auburn, Opelika area and you're looking for some sweet eats, our friends at Los Amigos have you covered. Nothing I love more, Chris, than walking into a restaurant and seeing that they scored 100 on that health and services score. A most comforting thing in today's day and age. So we appreciate our friends at Los Amigos for taking care of all our people. You guys, they've been telling us that you guys have been coming in and letting them know that you found them on the War Report. We appreciate that. Please keep that going. Also, our friends at Joy Mode. Visit tryjoymode.com and use code report to get 20% off plus free shipping. Imagine a supplement like your favorite greens pack that you can put in 6 to 8 ounces of water 45 minutes before the boom boom time, and bam, Joy Mode has you covered. Visit tryjoymode.com, use code report for 20% off plus free shipping. And before you get all to that, down to all that nasty business, make sure you clean it up down there. Our friends at Manscaped, visit manscaped.com, use code report to get 20% off plus free shipping there as well. Our friends at Manscaped helping over 11 million men worldwide with their personal grooming and care. Whether it's your beard, I see you got a nice beard going there, Chris, or it's the boys downstairs. Manscaped has something that has you covered. The Beard Hedger is a great product. Also, the Lawnmower 5.0 for what you got going on down there. No matter what it is, your woman will thank you this holiday season by going to manscaped.com and using code report to get 20% off plus free shipping. Let's jump back in here. Jackson Arnold is an Auburn Tiger, Chris. Hugh Freeze got his quarterback, and he also went out and got Ashton Daniels to come in here. So he got two guys with P5 starting experience to come in and emptied his quarterback room. It's not a guy left in there. Payne Thorne, obviously out of eligibility, but Hank Brown and Walker White, two guys who he recruited, by the way, said, I'm going to go play elsewhere. And then Holden Geriner, the holdover from the Harsin era that decided he was leaving. No surprise there. Is Jackson Arnold the guy, and is he a top 5 quarterback in the SEC next year as a guy with a former 5-star, Chris, with Power 5 starting experience and in the SEC?
Yeah, Mike, I think number one, he's definitely the guy. I don't think you bring in a guy like Jackson Arnold unless you feel very, very confident he's going to be your guy. I also wanted to add, I mean, not that Auburn needed help at the receiver position, but you can never have too many. You add Eric Singleton Jr., obviously from Georgia Tech. You know, I know that Auburn made a pretty convincing offer to him, thus him heading down to the Plains, and why not? I mean, you look at his tape, the guy's a playmaker. So you add another guy on the outside for Jackson Arnold, already added to Cam Coleman and others, but I look at Jackson Arnold as a fringe top 5 quarterback in the league. I don't know if I'm ready to say he's top 5. And it's, you know, you and I were talking off air, Mike. It might be a little unfair from the standpoint that, you know, I'm just going off what I've seen, and what I've seen hasn't been very good.
Okay.
But I think the question is, how much of it do you put on him? Because I will say this.
Oklahoma
Jackson Arnold
last year, Chris. They were terrible.
Well, I was going to say the thing with Jackson Arnold, he reminds me a little bit of Garrett Nussmeier from the standpoint he's a gunslinger. And you just kind of got to live with that. You know what I mean? Like at times he's going to make the big play, and other times, you know, turnovers could come back to haunt him. But, I'll tell you this. To be fair to Jackson Arnold, he's got top 5 quarterback, returner, new, whatever, top 5 in the league potential.
Okay.
It's just we haven't even seen remotely his potential tapped into, because it was just a mess in Norman, man. I thought they gave up on him way too early. You know, he'd been playing in non-conference, struggled a little bit, but you had a new OC. He was fine. Then the Tennessee game comes. I know he turned the football over, but you just can't bail on your guy that quickly. And so you think about what mentally Jackson Arnold had to deal with as they go to Michael Hawkins Jr. You know, credit to him for coming back in later in the season and playing some pretty good football, you know, beat Alabama. So, I think he's got the potential to be a top 5 guy. I'm not ready right now to put him in the top 5 because there are others in the conference that I think right now I feel more confident in just because I've seen it. But again, I want to be fair to Arnold because I think a lot of it, Mike, it wasn't his fault in Norman. I mean, it was a complete mess. So I am optimistic on Jackson Arnold. I'll tell you this, Mike. The thing in my question about Arnold isn't so much his skill set or his talent or what he can be. It's about Hugh Freeze and developing him. That's what it comes back
That's
to
fair.
for me. I'm more so concerned about the coaching staff putting him and that group of weapons in the best possible position to succeed. And I think if it doesn't work and if it fails and the offense isn't good, I got a weird feeling we're going to be talking more about that than we are. Well, Jackson Arnold just somehow forgot how to play football.
Yeah, just make sure you come back and tell Auburn fans that. Yeah, funny habit of
I mean,
throwing
wasn't it
players
Hank
under.
Brown?
Yeah.
Didn't he say, was it Hank Brown that went to Baylor?
No, it was Walker White that went to
Walker
Baylor,
White,
the
okay.
top 50 overall player and quarterback that recruited as hard for Auburn as anybody has in the last like 4 or 5 years as a recruit, making sure that Hugh Freeze secured a highly rated class in his first full class. Look, Chris.
Didn't I see him quote that when he said that I'm excited to go somewhere where they're going to develop the quarterback position?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
not something he said?
but that was taken out of context, and the guy who reported that, Pete Thamel, he knows what he was doing. He was asking questions.
Fair enough. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know there's been some questions about the way things are going behind the scenes. I just I think Jackson Arnold, if they can tap into his potential, the guy can be a top 5 quarterback in the league. I need to see it.
Yeah, the question about the coaching staff is fair. Is this the staff to get that potential out of him? That's the question that I have. Because to your point, where has been the quarterback development the last couple of years? Now, you may point to the improvement that you saw in Peyton Thorne from year 1 to year 2 at Auburn, but I would counter and say what we saw in year 2 is the guy he was at Michigan State. They just got him back to where he was, to what you expected when he came in. And the regression that you saw in year 1 here, which was like 1,300 yards worth of regression or something crazy like that, right? Like that wasn't about Peyton Thorne. I think that was about the system and about some things that they got going on offense that they have to figure out. Look, if you needed a quarterback to save you, I don't think Jackson Arnold's it. That's just my personal opinion. If you needed a quarterback to come in and Cam Newton this thing, it's not Jackson Arnold. He is a 5-star guy, but is he the guy that's going to take over a game and make everybody around him look like, Megatron? I don't think that he is. Oklahoma ran him 150 times last year, Chris. 150 carries for the QB. Jarquez Hunter had 180-something carries last year. So I don't think that Auburn wants to run him that much, but what they have done is they put a better than solid wide receiver core around him. Look, Cam Coleman is going to be top 3 best returning receivers in the SEC next year. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Eric Singleton Jr. was the second player in the portal. He's number 1 until Mateer entered. So you've got him there. You've got a top 30 overall player in Perry Thompson, who should get some burn on the outside. You've got Malcolm Simmons, who was a budding star, top 150 player, part of that original Freeze 4. And then you've got Bryce Kane. And, Auburn fans have to get used to talent stacked on talent. That's something they haven't been used to on the Plains. And they are legitimately too deep at every single position at wide receiver. It's absolutely a good problem to have. And you've got to find a system that can utilize their talents and a quarterback that's capable of running it. So I don't think we've seen that in the first 2 years. Statistically, Auburn moved the needle in the passing game. It's undeniable that Peyton Thorne doesn't sit out New Mexico, Chris, and half of Arkansas. He's a 3,000-yard passer last year. But the wins and losses were about play calling in crucial situations that failed them again and again. Look, Peyton Thorne and Jackson Arnold had a conversation before he committed to Auburn. And the question was asked of Peyton Thorne. It's a War Report exclusive here. Can I win there? And Peyton told him, yes, you can win there. You can absolutely win at Auburn. So there is a belief that the pieces are in place. And that's what he communicated to Jackson Arnold. So Jackson believes it's there. He's just got to believe that the coaches are going to put them in the best position to win. Before we get out of here, tell me, where would you rank Jackson Arnold, though, in terms of starting returning quarterbacks in the league? I mean, we agree. Jackson, we didn't talk about him, but Jackson Dart is gone. We know Lane Kiffin is going to field a competent quarterback. That's just what he does. So I don't think that development there in Oxford is being questioned. But where do you rank him? Amongst the returning guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think right around 5th or 6th, Mike.
Okay.
I mean, some of the guys I think ahead of him, Garrett
Nuss. We
Nussmeier,
got Nuss.
Lenora Sellers. I mean, what do you feel about Diego Pavia? He's
Oh, yeah,
back.
we forgot.
We
He won
forgot
the
about
20th
we
year of
almost off
eligibility.
air forgot about got another year. A DJ. He's right there around where DJ Lagway would be for me.
Okay.
Again,
For DJ
I've seen
Lagway.
more. I've seen more positively from DJ Lagway, but the situation's completely different. I think the skill sets you could argue are fairly similar when it comes to those two guys.
Nico.
Yeah, I right now, man, this would be a hot take in Knoxville. Right now, I'd probably put Jackson Arnold slightly ahead of Nico Iamaleava. I mean, he had a rough year, man. Like in an offense where quarterbacks tend to thrive. So
They made the playoffs.
They did, but they made it because of Dylan Sampson and an elite front seven. I mean, Nico didn't exactly do a ton for them. But I think right around that 5-6 range. I think there's some of the guys I mentioned, like I said, ahead of him. Again, I think he has the potential to be top 3 in the conference, but it's just all about, like you mentioned, tapping into that potential. And listen, I think the harsh reality is this, and whether Auburn fans want to hear it or not, when you got all that talent and you're stacking all that talent, when talent no longer becomes an issue, if it doesn't work, there's only one other thing it can be. So I think that's why there's so much pressure on Hugh Freeze going into year 3, because at some point it's like, all right, you use this guy under center as a scapegoat the last 2 years. Well, we got a new guy. If the results are the same, it's you.
Yeah. The pressure's on him, but he put the pressure on himself, Chris. I'm going to put the pressure on you before we get out of here. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, really excited, man, again, to pick this back up and be chatting with you every single week. We're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content, YouTube, podcast, wherever you get those, and also our website, secunfiltered.com. And again, stay tuned. It's not just football with us, just like you, Mike, basketball, baseball, everything in between, man. We're rocking and rolling heading into getting 2025 started. So appreciate you, Mike. It's always a pleasure.
That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Thank you so much for turning on the War Report for your first listen of the day. Look, we're going to be back at you guys next week. As always, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.